right, welcome to the show, guys. It is great to have you on. My name is Wes Solder. I'm the host of Conservatism on Tap. Always grateful to be joined by my brother John. Welcome back, John. Looking good over there.
Nice to
And
see
then
you.
Josh Lewis from Saving Elephants podcast. Always a pleasure to have you on the show, brother. Thanks for being here.
It's good to be here. It's been a bit of a hiatus since I've been back, so good to be back in the saddle.
Yeah, it's great to
Oh
have
yeah, it's been like 3 weeks, hasn't it? Yeah, that's right for you.
Yeah. We've
Dang.
got all kinds of fun stuff happening here. You know, we're doing all these upgrades. We're starting to upgrade our quality, working through new cameras. We'll see how long mine lasts. I got a brand new one that I just got a couple days ago, so I'm working with live. We've got a new guest on Refounding Fathers, which is a lot of fun. And then we're starting to add a little bit more definition and structure to this show, so you're kind of seeing that happen. So I'm excited to bring you along, Josh, and to be able to see this as we go through it. What we're going to do in this show is we're going to have 3 different sections each show. And that's going to be, what are you drinking? And then we're going to go through our toast and roast. We started doing that a couple weeks ago of finding something that we love out in pop culture or media, and then something that we just absolutely have to make fun of when we just can't pass
Right.
it. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And then we're going to get into, what are you reading? Because I know all of us are big into philosophy and conservative theory and all of those things. So it's a great opportunity for us to be able to dive deep before we're through. So without further ado, getting into what are you drinking tonight, I want to give John the opportunity to jump into that. So
Right.
tell me, brother, what are you going for? That looks fantastic, by the way. Tell us about it.
There it is. That's it. Oh, that's much better quality. Yeah. So this is Samuel Smith's organic chocolate stout. Now I'll tell you this, like, I'm not sure what organic chocolate actually means, but this is like the classic chocolate stout that you could ever possibly buy. It's based off in England and York, and they do an incredible recipe. It's only about 5%. So it's not really that heavy, but everyone can appreciate different levels of chocolate, right? I mean,
Yeah.
like, you got your Hershey's chocolate, you know how that tastes with Yingling right there, Wes, right? And you've
Weird.
got like your
Weird is my
gourmet,
answer to that. Yeah.
right? But you've got your gourmet chocolate,
Yeah.
the kind that you don't want to drink too much of. It's pretty decadent. Maybe a little bit on the bitter side if you like it dark or something. And that's kind of where the Samuel Smith stout is going to be treating you. It is very drinkable. It's lightly carbonated. It pours black as all get out. So that's the pour right there.
Got
So which is pretty boss. And if you ever wanted to, like, if you wanted to know what chocolate is like in beer, what good quality chocolate is like in a good quality beer, this is the one. It's actually very accessible. I usually go out of my way to get it, but you should be able to find it at your local grocery store.
And I got to get
cheers.
on. Yeah, I got to get on that quick, because here we've got about maybe 2 or 3 weeks in Florida before it gets like excruciatingly hot. Like once you hit late May and especially into like June, like the only thing that you can possibly drink in terms of beer is like wheat, Hefeweizen, like light stuff, because it gets so hot. That's why I love traveling, when it gets super hot, get to someplace that's a little cooler on the climate. And me, I love beers like this. I love the thick, sweet beers. That's where I'm at, man. So I'm going to get on to that quick. That's awesome.
And it's meaning something too, because I've gone through a journey of appreciating 13% beers, 14% ABV beers. Like, it's pretty ridiculous what you can get to. But this one has always stuck with me as being a good go-to instant win. It's great for midnight, even no matter what part of the year it is. But I highly recommend it if you can get your hands on it.
I'm going to have to get on that, because yes, the Hershey's Yingling is what I had last when it came to like, a porter, and like it just didn't work. Like it didn't work at all. It's like,
That's what they said it was.
It's like if you took Yingling and you drank some, and then you took a bite out of a Hershey bar, right? Like, okay, I mean, there's no mixing at all that took place. So I'm excited about this. That looks a lot better. So great recommendation, man. I'm going to get on that. That's fantastic. And now we got to get into our toast and roast. So now we've got our beer to toast with. Tell me about this story, because John, you were kind of giving me a preview of what this guy did. So give us somebody to toast who's done something fantastic.
People need good news.
Yeah.
I mean, am I right? Like, people need some good news in their life. I don't know about y'all, but Josh, before the this show started, we were just talking about how we need something good in our lives. Maybe a change, something that helps us out. So that's why I think this toast and roast is going to be good. But if this video functions well, then you'll be able to see that this truck driver ends up seeing that a utility worker, his truck was on fire, and the utility worker is like in a bucket seat, in the crane, and he's working on like some type of street light or something, but like the whole truck catches fire, so the guy can't get out. And so this truck driver comes over there, saves the guy, and drives away just as the car explodes. It's like something from a movie.
Wow.
And everybody's like around there. So we should just tune in and watch this.
Yeah, I'm going to put the link in the description for this video, so you'll have to talk.
Okay, because it's not on YouTube. Yeah, but you should see it. So you can see that there's the crane right there.
Yeah,
and it's just shooting out pillars of black smoke. Right, the guy probably can't even breathe. And the full story is that there was a police officer who saw there was not much he could do. Right, yeah. He sees the utility worker stuck. He sees a truck driver that's at the intersection. He runs to the truck driver and says, "Hey, pull up right there and save this guy." And the truck driver he just guns it right over there so that the guy jumps onto the top of the truck, and then they get away fast before it explodes.
I'm about to post that.
So toast to this guy, man.
Yeah, that's
awesome. Wow,
that's fantastic.
This makes me think of the world we live in. I think it's hard to lose sight sometimes of the countless sacrifices and heroes there really are out there. I heard it told once that when this whole COVID epidemic episode is over, that we may in fact look back in the midst of it. It's easy to think about, on a daily basis, just the news churning out about some of the stupidity that's done. Some individuals either taking the virus too seriously or not seriously enough. But the reality is, in our individual lives, there are a lot of heroes. There's a lot of people that have made enormous sacrifices. And it's hard for that good news to travel as quickly, mostly because it's so individualized. But there really are a lot of true heroes out there that ought to be celebrated as such.
Yeah, and it's just we've got to bring attention to them, right? Because it's the people who do horrible things that get clicks, right? Like it's the news that surprises you or shocks you or dismays you that people gravitate to. We've got to push back against that. You got to recognize it for sure, but you got to recognize the other side. So I'm so grateful for that. Exactly. So absolutely, that's a fantastic toast. There's the link right there. I just put it here in the description.
Awesome.
Video, so people can take a look at that. I do have the video for our roast, however. So moving to the other side of this, tell me about Nancy Pelosi, John. What is she up to?
Yeah, so this comes after the the court decision related to George Floyd's death, and Nancy Pelosi ended up coming out, making a statement, and you'll see what she says to George Floyd directly in just a moment.
Let's take a look.
We saw it happen, and thank God the jury validated what we saw. So again, thank you, George Floyd, for sacrificing your life for justice, for being there to call out to your mom. How heartbreaking was that? Call out for your mom. I can't breathe. But because of you, and because of thousands, millions of people around the world who came out for justice, your name will always be synonymous with justice. And now we have to make sure justice prevails in the sentencing. But that's its own procedure.
There you go. Wow. Yeah, it's amazing what you do at this point.
So let's talk about this for a second. So we have a terrible murder, a horrible murder that occurred. And Nancy Pelosi basically coming out there as if George Floyd woke up one day and was just like, you know what? I will sacrifice my life, call out to my mother with my neck under a police officer's knee. That will be my legacy. So insensitive, and does horrible justice to what actually happened.
Right.
But I don't know. That's just me. Maybe. What do y'all think?
Go ahead, Josh.
I think Nancy Pelosi, in some way, she's the gift that keeps on giving. With some of her the things she says from time to time. But I don't think in her heart of hearts she actually believes this. I think part of what we're witnessing here is the danger of the politicization, if you will, or turning everything into a political project. It's and not that there aren't enormous political implications to George Floyd's death, to his murder, to the conviction of the cop that killed him. I think the nation breathed a huge sigh of relief with the conviction this week. But I think these are kind of the traps we run into when we make everything about a national story and forget that there's a human at the other end of this.
Right.
That it's easy to commoditize George Floyd, almost like he's this thing that died for us. Freudian slip, if you will, but it's one that's kooky.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I mean, this is what liberals do that opens them up to the counterattack from like Candace Owens and others. It's like, wait a minute, this is your guy. This is the poster child for liberalism today. Okay, like let me tell you the rest of the story then, right? And then they bring it, and now we're in this fight because you're either apparently you're this like saint or you're a complete villain, and of course life isn't that simple. And the minute then people start to break that down, then there's all this anger and hatred on the other side. So yeah, absolutely. I think you have to roast that. And then of course there's the appropriation aspect of this, of like, oh, you know, like we're going to take that and we're going to run with it to be able to get where we want to go. And that's always a danger, you know, that's always a danger. So I agree with you, man. That's definitely a roast. So we'll have to keep following that. And now we got to get into the depth of our show, which is, what are you reading? So, you know, we talk about what we're drinking. We talk about, you know, what's going on in the world. But then what is capturing your attention otherwise? When you get the chance to sit down with a book, what's coming up, John?
Yeah, so this is a book that I've been reading and rereading about every couple of years now, ever since high school. It's E.F. Schumacher's Guide for the Perplexed.
Yeah.
Have you seen this at all yet, Josh? Have you read this one or anything like it?
Sorry, I think we just lost his audio.
Oh, it's okay.
I'm sorry, I hit the mute button accidentally.
Yeah.
I have not. No, tell me about it.
Yep. So this is a very short work, but this was written by Schumacher at the end of his life. All right. So he's he's an economist mainly at heart, but he wrote this short philosophical treatise, and in it, like near the end of his life, he basically handed the manuscript to his daughter and said, "This is it. This is what my life's work is really all about." But it's not very well. It's not his most known work. It's not a very well known work, even if you do know him or know of him. But what it is essentially is a map for philosophy and a map for holistic living. It has a number of different elements that he touches on, such as like Buddhism and Christianity and things like that. But his ultimate goal is to try to provide direction for people who feel confused by modern philosophy, by skepticism, by materialism. And one of his quotes that I really enjoy is him talking about how hard it is to actually see through your own perceptions, I guess, to criticize your own philosophy enough to be able to be open-minded to what others are saying, to what you're actually experiencing. Because he opens the book by saying, I was in Leningrad, I was looking for different, places to go to. I had a map, but I saw that the map was inaccurate because it wasn't listing the churches. I was right in front of a church. I was there. I was looking at the map, and the church was not listed on the map. So I talked to somebody, and I say, why is this church not on the map? And they say, well, churches aren't on the map. We don't show churches on our map. And he's like, that's weird. I mean, how am I supposed to find my way around because there's so many churches? And he felt the same way about philosophy in his time. And he thought that him writing this book would be a way to show, like, I'm going to actually show the things that people are unwilling to see. And in it, he brings up Thomas Aquinas, right? He brings up Buddha, he brings up Confucius, but all to basically state that there's more to life than what we see. There's more to life than what math can tell us, than what chemistry and biology and science can tell us. There is something else. It is invisible. It is the other. But that's his premise. And where I wanted to bring this forward for you all is that he says one of the most difficult things is to criticize the own eye that you use to see. And he means that, on an inner level where we all have our own views. we all have our own perceptions of reality, but to actually take the glasses off, that you used to see and say, I'm not sure if these are on correctly, or I don't know if these are the right lenses. That takes extraordinary bravery, and that takes extraordinary courage. And I wanted to know how that quote strikes y'all.
Yeah, a couple things. So I just pulled it out from my bookshelf here, and I think the first thing about it is that it's a very small book. You can see how thin it is there. I mean, it's like 110 pages basically, and small pages too. So you can burn through this pretty quickly, like in a weekend.
Almost one night, really. Yeah.
And the first thing is, when I read this book, it really helped me understand that all society is based on faith. Whether you are an atheist or a Christian or a Buddhist, like we all approach the perspective that we have to some extent on faith. And I think St. Augustine said this, many other, people have said this way before him, but he does it in such a concise and convincing way. He really makes that point solid, is that whenever we think about logic and reason, all these things, it can help us to be able to refine our beliefs, but it's not a belief in itself, right? Is that
Mm-hmm.
takes at some point a choice. I choose to believe this. I choose to put my trust into this, right? Because there's perception. We're confined to our perception. We use two eyes, two ears. We use our brain to be able to perceive the world, and then our mind to be able to grab, and our heart to gravitate to conclusions about it. And recognizing that, it makes you
Mm-hmm.
very humble, and allows you to be able to explore a lot of different beliefs that maybe you wouldn't have otherwise, and try to figure out why people have come to that conclusion. So that self-awareness I thought was really cool. And then he's very big on um, trying to perceive that in others. So one of my favorite quotes is, he talks about how we tend to look at our own actions and we give ourselves the benefit of the doubt, right? We're like, well, I did this action because of all of this backstory, right? Like, which I myself know, right? So you do something where, hey, maybe you don't give money to somebody on the side of the street, and that action can be perceived as insensitive, but you're like, whoa, 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 whoa. No, I know that guy, and I know what he's going to do with that money because I've, had a run in with him before, right? Or you have some kind of, there's more to the
Right.
story side, and you're like, well, that's why I didn't do it, you know. But then we look at somebody else and their action, and we don't give them any backstory at all. We're like, I can't believe that guy did that. He's a jerk, right?
Yeah.
So we judge ourselves by our intentions, and then we judge other people by their actions alone, right? And so he's
Yeah.
calling you to try to understand why people do what they do, and with yourself as well. Recognize the faith behind your worldview. So I thought that was so fascinating, so humbling, in such a short book. So that's my reaction to it. That's the use of it for me.
Yeah.
So
How about you, Josh?
I'm having a hard time formulating my thoughts because I'm so captivated by this cover.
yeah,
All the colors going on there. My OCD nature is, I like it, but I'm also like, I got to put those things in order. But I think, like, I'm not familiar with the author. I'm not familiar with the book. It sounds like a really interesting concept. I was kind of struck by, there is the book, The Conflict of Visions by Thomas Sowell, the conservative author. He talks about visions, what I think we're more accustomed to calling worldviews,
yeah,
as these things that reality comes at us, and in our fallible nature, we can't truly evaluate all facts completely objectively. We can't hold all information in our head at once. And so we're reliant on these visions. Conservatism is a vision. It's a worldview, if you will. It's a filter by which we kind of judge or evaluate or understand reality. But that doesn't stop us from, John, kind of, you're saying, occasionally taking off the glasses. You can't always take them off. A human can't do that. But a human can, from time to time, take off the glasses and try to take a step back and examine the very filter that they're using to evaluate the world around them.
yeah.
And again, having not read the book, I don't know how much it gets into that, but that's an interesting. It sounds to me like that's at least an aspect of what the author's trying to get across here.
Yeah,
It
because
absolutely is.
his backstory, right, John, is that he's got experience in, I think you mentioned it, in Buddhism, as he came through
Mhm.
Christianity from an Eastern mindset. And
Yeah.
it's so fascinating, right? Because like in the Western mindset, we kind of think that if we're Christians, that's the only way to perceive Christianity. But and where he came from is totally different. A good example is he was talking about the resurrection, I think briefly, and how in Eastern religion, like if you were to become a Christian, you're like, well, yeah, we already believe in resurrection, so sure, Jesus resurrected, But then they talk about the authority of God and how there's one God. Then they're like, whoa, hold on a minute, that's wild, which is just
Mhm.
so different from us. If in the Western side, so many people struggle with the resurrection and the miracles and things that run counter to modern science. But then we're like, yeah, hey, this notion of like, one God versus many, like, sure, whatever, like
Mhm.
that isn't nearly the stumbling block, So
Yeah.
really fast.
I
And
think too, like he brings an interesting perspective on like free will and this
yeah,
this idea between like determinism and free will, where he has this, and it's a very interesting kind of, I guess, inner, almost like you can definitely tell it's from his Eastern background, but he believes that there is a potential for free will, but not every person uses that ability. In fact, it's a very rare ability to find, because what you find in life is that you end up being lived rather than living actively. And what he means is that there are points in our life where we can attain such a degree of self-awareness about ourselves and direct attention that you can make a solid choice. You can make a free choice that shapes things, that changes the way, the course of history and that sort of thing. But most often enough, people who are not contemplative, who are not thinking of these things, end up being lived by life. A good example would be the social dilemma. I know we've talked about it before, but I keep wanting to bring it back, is that people are ending up being driven by computers, by social media, they're being buffeted by the comments that they receive or the things and the feelings that they feel by the comments that they read, and they have to somehow prove something, as opposed to not necessarily putting the phone down, but metaphorically, basically being able to see for yourself where you're at in life, setting goals for yourself and trying to attain that. And for Schumacher, it's very much these inner sight, this inner goal to be able to become a better person,
yeah,
essentially, without
awesome.
without the elitism, but to become a better person. And usually that means growing closer towards this higher perception of God, of something that is bigger than yourself. And it drives you to the community. It drives you to connect with others, and not to isolate necessarily. But he promotes a solid art of meditation, as well as engagement with your body, your mind, your voice, your spirit, like everything in you. And that usually requires external interaction. So he has a really good blend, like you said, Wes, of Eastern mysticism, but also Christianity, which is this inner looking, and then this external application that I find that is just very refreshing.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So very good, and not necessarily someone that people would consider conservative, but yet he has all these beliefs that I think are cool for us. He the other book, and you see it right there. He says the author of Small is Beautiful. His other
Yeah.
book gets into the argument that whether it's government or business or whatever, bringing it down to the personal level is the best way to inspire true free will, as well as the type of interactions that actually make life substantive and meaningful. So that the
Mhm.
idea that even that government, when it's far away from us, becomes more insensitive and less attuned to our needs. But if it's local, it may not be as pretty, but it can be much more responsive. And how useful is that? When we think about people, everyone knows who Donald Trump is and Joe Biden is, but how many people know who their mayor, who their city council people are, right? Like we just don't even think
Yeah.
about it. And yet, who has more an effect on your life, on a day-to-day basis? The same thing
You
with
may.
businesses and things like
Yeah.
that, right?
Yeah. So what was interesting earlier this past week, and this is honestly by like interesting coincidence that we're talking about this book of promise, is because I am actually going through it all over again. But just a couple of days ago, I met this guy at the library who was reading "Small is Beautiful." He had
Oh,
it on
very
the
cool.
desk, and I was like, "Oh, Schumacher's book! Like you're reading that? It's awesome." Turns out he works for a non-denominational church, and he's just trying to find new ways to engage with the local community that isn't necessarily written like under some Christian
Yeah,
treatise, like an overly pastoral bias.
very cool.
So he picked this one up on a whim, and I'm like, you will love it, and it will definitely inspire you to find new ways to engage with this community. And he said that what they were doing earlier was providing tutoring services for, the local public schooling students who have the time to be able to be just dropped off and have a free meal and that sort of thing. I'm like, that is so awesome that a book like this can inspire that kind of mentality and not just trust that the state government is just going to take care of it all.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, thank you, John. I appreciate it. I appreciate the recommendation on that. That's an awesome one. So definitely a lot of fun tonight talking about that stuff. So many different concepts that are useful for us. So Josh, thank you so much for being on the show. I know you've got some pretty big guests coming up for your podcast. Did you want to go over those real quick and talk about that for a second?
Yeah, I'm still in communication with George H. Nash. I would love to get him on. We're trying to work out the details, but hopefully, if all goes well, I'm going to have Jonah Goldberg from the Dispatch on for my next episode. We're thrilled to have him. His podcast, The Remnant, remains one of my favorite podcasts. He's a very unusual guy in that he's conservative, but he's also funny.
Yeah,
just kind of a rare comment, like genuinely funny.
Right.
And so I'm definitely going to enjoy picking his brain, and we're probably going to spend about half the episode bad mouthing Woodrow Wilson, his favorite
there you go.
punching bag.
There you go. I can't wait to hear it, man. That's going to be awesome. We'll be looking forward to that. Well, thank you so much. Definitely tune in to Saving Elephants podcast as well as our shows. We've got Refounding Fathers every Sunday before this one, as well as our solo podcast on Wednesdays. John, thank you for all the work. Thank you for all that great content that you gave us, all the recommendations there for the beer and the book. And then I'm sure, like Josh said, Nancy Pelosi is going to give us some more clips to roast coming forward. So
No doubt.
Thanks again, you guys, and I will see you next Sunday.
Take care.